What happens when a CEO orders from his own website? And the delivery almost makes him shut the whole thing down. Zeke Johnson leaned back in his chair and rubbed his eyes. The glow from his laptop lit the corner of his office, the only light in the room. It was past midnight, and the office was quiet. Everyone had gone home hours ago. He stared at the customer complaints file his assistant had dropped off earlier that day. It wasn't just the usual noise. These were serious. Late deliveries, missing items, rude drivers. The kind of stuff that made people never come back. Zeke had bought the company 7 years ago when it was just a small chain of 3 stores selling home essentials, everything from furniture to dishware. Now it had 13 locations across 3 states and a booming online store. Profits were up. But something had started to slip. He scrolled through the website, clicked on a few items, and placed an order under a fake name, Ellie Carter. It was a set of cookware and a small side table. He chose store pickup, selecting the 9th location on the list, one he had never visited in person, on purpose. That location was in a quiet suburb outside Columbus. He had never met the team there. They'd had 3 store managers in the last 18 months. The current one, someone named Mason, had been there for 6 months. The district manager, Carla, had sent glowing reports, but Zeke had learned something over the years. Reports weren't the truth. People told you what they thought you wanted to hear. He wanted to see what the customers saw. Before heading out, he made sure his disguise was solid. He trimmed his beard down, dyed it a little darker, threw on a pair of simple black-rimmed glasses, dressed in worn jeans and a Henley. He looked like any other customer. Nobody at that store had ever seen him in person, not even in passing. Corporate didn't post his photo anywhere. That had always been intentional. 3 days later, he pulled into the store's parking lot in an old Honda he borrowed from his cousin. It was just past noon on a Thursday. The lot was half full. A couple of customers walked out carrying small boxes. No one looked thrilled. Inside, the store was quiet. The shelves were decently stocked but dusty. A woman in a red polo shirt stood behind the counter, chewing gum and scrolling on her phone. Another employee, tall, maybe late 20s, was arguing with a middle-aged customer near the back. Zeke walked up to the counter. The woman looked up slowly, not saying a word. "Hi, I placed an online order under the name Ellie Carter. I'm here for pickup." She blinked at him, sighed, and tapped her screen. "Did you get a pickup text?" "Yeah, yesterday." She didn't respond. She walked off without a word. Zeke glanced around. A man in a motorized wheelchair was trying to flag down someone near aisle 10. No one noticed him. The woman returned 5 minutes later, holding only the cookware. "Where's the table?" Zeke asked. She shrugged. "No idea, probably in the back." "We've been slammed." She dropped the box on the counter. "You can wait or come back," he frowned. "I'll wait." She rolled her eyes and walked off again. 10 minutes passed. Zeke walked around the store. No one greeted him. No one asked what he was looking for. He overheard the guy near the back still arguing. Apparently, he'd been sold an open box item as new. The employee, now clearly frustrated, said, "Look, man, I'm not gonna argue with you over $20. Zeke clenched his jaw. Another 5 minutes. He returned to the counter. The woman was back on her phone. "Hey, any update on my table?" he asked. She didn't look up. "Still looking. Can I talk to a manager?" She gave him a look. "Mason's not here. He comes in when he wants. You'll have to wait." Zeke stared at her. "Is there anyone else in charge?" She popped her gum. "Nope." At that moment, a younger employee walked out from the back carrying a large box. Her name tag said Jessa. She looked tired but smiled as she approached. "Ellie Carter?" she asked, setting the box down gently. Zeke nodded. "Yeah." "Thanks. Sorry for the wait. It was buried behind some returns. We're a little short-staffed today." He nodded. "You're the only one who said a word to me since I walked in." Jessa gave a small smile. "Yeah, I try." He leaned in slightly. "Do you do pickups often, all the time?" "Some folks don't really like doing them, so I usually just jump in." "Why are you short-staffed?" Jessa looked around before answering quietly. "Well, 2 people quit this week. One got yelled at by Mason in front of a customer. The other was just burnt out." "We've been doing double shifts." Zeke nodded slowly. "Thanks for being honest." He picked up the boxes and walked out. As he loaded them into the car, a gust of frustration hit him. This was what his customers were going through. He opened the cookware box. One of the pans was dented. The receipt was missing. The packing slip was stained with something that smelled like soda. He sat in the car, gripping the steering wheel. "This is garbage," he muttered. He wasn't going to send an email or wait for another report. He needed to see what was happening behind those walls. Not as a customer this time. He was going to work there. As a Lee Carter, starting tomorrow. Zeke walked through the employee entrance just before 8 the next morning. The back hallway smelled faintly of cardboard and old coffee. A handwritten sign taped to the breakroom door read, "Clock in or don't come back. M." He stared at it for a moment before pushing through. Inside, a young man was hunched over a vending machine, trying to coax a granola bar loose with a hanger. A woman sat at the small table, sipping from a cracked thermos and scrolling through her phone. No one looked up. He approached the time clock and punched in using the fake employee ID corporate had created for this undercover stint. Lee Carter, new hire, part-time floor associate. His files said he'd transferred from a closed location up north. The store manager hadn't even asked for an interview, just sent back a short email. "We'll take anyone." The assistant manager, a wiry woman with tightly pulled hair and a clipboard tucked under one arm, found him by the stockroom door. "Carter?" she asked without looking up from her papers. "Yeah, follow me." She didn't introduce herself. Just led him through the cramped back area into the main floor, where music played faintly over the speakers, just loud enough to be annoying but not quite loud enough to drown out the hum of the refrigerators near the appliance section. "Here's the deal," she said, stopping abruptly. "You're on floor today. Unbox freight, restock shelves. Don't talk to customers unless they ask. If you see something broken, toss it. If you forget your badge, don't bother coming back. Got it? Good. You're working with Kevin. He's in housewares." She pointed across the store, then turned on her heel and walked off. Kevin was already knee-deep in a pile of cardboard when Zeke arrived. He had a Bluetooth headset in one ear and moved with quick, jerky motions, his sleeves rolled up to the elbows. A half-empty pallet of slow cookers sat beside him. "You the new guy?" Kevin asked without stopping. "Yeah, Illy, grab a box cutter. You know how to rotate stock?" "Yeah, good, let's go." They worked in silence for a while. Zeke watched how Kevin moved efficient but distracted. He kept checking his phone between boxes, typing short responses. After a while, Kevin started talking without prompting. "Been here 5 months," he said. "Was supposed to be temporary, still here." Zeke nodded. "Lost our third guy 2 weeks ago, just walked out, didn't even clock out. Just dropped a box and left." Zeke kept unpacking. "Wasn't the first." He didn't respond. The aisles felt colder than the temperature suggested. The lights overhead flickered occasionally, and one of the shelf displays leaned slightly to the left. A customer wandered over around noon, holding a receipt and a broken lamp base. "Excuse me," she said, looking between them. "I bought this here 2 days ago. It was cracked when I opened the box." Kevin didn't look up. "No refunds on damaged items unless you bought the warranty." "I didn't see a warranty option." "Then it's store credit," she hesitated. "Can I speak with a manager?" Kevin made a vague gesture toward the front. "If you can find him." Zeke stepped forward. "Let me take that," he said. "I'll grab a replacement from the back." The woman handed it over, uncertain. Kevin shot him a look once she walked off. "You're not gonna last long if you keep doing people favors." "I just figured no one cares." "You'll see." Zeke carried the broken lamp to the back, navigating through cluttered aisles and stacks of unopened inventory. The back room was a mess, overflowing returns, torn boxes, and a stack of folding chairs teetering dangerously atop a dolly. A young woman was trying to tape up a box that was clearly too large for the contents inside. "You seen the brass lamps?" he asked her. She looked up, startled. Maybe in aisle 23 or back near the seasonal stuff." "Thanks. What's your name?" "Lee, you knew." He nodded. "Illy," she smiled faintly. "Welcome to the chaos." Back on the floor, he found a similar lamp, boxed and intact. The customer was still lingering by the counter, arms crossed. He handed it over along with a fresh receipt. Her face softened. "Thank you, really." He just nodded. Jessa passed by a few minutes later, pushing a cart of clearance tags. "You're the guy from yesterday," she said, stopping beside him. "Pick up order." "Yeah, first day." She raised an eyebrow. "Why would you come work here after that mess?" "Just needed work." She didn't press. Well, if you're on floor, good luck. They'll run you ragged. How long you been here? 4 years. Started part-time in college. Got promoted last year, then demoted when Mason took over. Said I wasn't assertive enough. He frowned. What does that mean? Means I don't yell. She moved on without waiting for a response. Around 1, the assistant manager from earlier returned with a clipboard and a sandwich she ate while walking. Lunch breaks 15 minutes, she said, tossing Zeke a time card with a greasy thumbprint on the corner. Don't be late. He found an empty spot in the break room beside the vending machine. The hanger from earlier was still jammed in the slot. Lee sat nearby, sipping a canned soup straight from the tin. You settling in okay? She asked, trying. Don't get too comfortable. Mason likes to rotate people when they get too confident. He glanced at her. Is that what happened to Jessa? She nodded. She was assistant manager until he showed up. He wrote her up for insubordination after she questioned a return policy. Next thing we know, she's stocking shelves again. Who's above Mason? District. Carla. Shows up once a month maybe. They act like best friends when she's here. You should see the performance. Free donuts, fake smiles. The second she leaves, it's back to normal. He took a bite of a stale protein bar. Lee lowered her voice. You seem different. How? Most people stop trying after day 2. He didn't answer. Later, as the day dragged on, the store grew busier. Customers lined up at the single open register. The woman from earlier stood behind it now, typing slowly with long nails that kept catching on the keys. Kevin had disappeared. Zeke found himself restocking alone, bouncing between departments as customers asked questions no one else seemed willing to answer. One woman asked about a missing part in a desk kit. A man wanted help loading a heavy box into his car. A teenager stood in the aisle for nearly 10 minutes waiting for someone to unlock a display case of headphones. No one came. Zeke handled what he could. By 6, his legs ached and his throat was dry. He hadn't seen Mason once. At closing, he helped Lee straighten the seasonal section. She moved slower now, dragging her feet a little. You always work close, he asked. Usually, I take what shifts they give me. Ever get a weekend off? She laughed faintly. Not unless I'm sick, and even then they call. They worked in silence for a while. As they locked the front doors, Jessa passed him a receipt and a clipboard. You're on freight again tomorrow, Mason's orders. He ever show up today? She shook her head. Probably will tomorrow. He likes to yell more when it's busy. Zeke stood by the door a moment after the others had gone. The parking lot was dark now, the lights flickering overhead. He looked back through the glass. He had seen enough to know this wasn't a one-time issue. It wasn't just a few missed deliveries or a broken item. This was culture, neglect, a slow rot from the top down, and it was his company. He walked to the car, unlocked it, and sat in the driver's seat without starting the engine. His hands rested on the steering wheel, unmoving. The next day, Mason would be there, and Lee Carter would be waiting. Zeke was already in uniform when Mason finally showed up. It was just after 10. The store had been open 2 hours. The team was already behind on restocking, a pallet of humidifiers still sitting near the entrance where it had been dropped off at opening. Zeke was near the back, breaking down boxes when he heard the voice. Loud, sharp. Not yelling, but carrying enough weight to snap heads around. Why is this display still half empty? Zeke looked up. Mason was tall, early 40s, in a button-down shirt that didn't quite hide the gold chain around his neck. He walked with the confidence of someone who thought every room owed him something. His eyes moved fast, scanning for fault. No one answered. The woman at the register dropped her gaze. Kevin, now unpacking a shipment of fans, kept his head down. Mason didn't wait. Where's Jessa? She's in seasonal, Lee said, not looking up from the clearance table she was straightening. Tell her to come find me. We need to redo the end caps before corporate shows next week. If she pushes back, I'll do it myself, and she can go back to unloading trucks. Zeke went back to folding cardboard, his hands tighter than necessary on the tape gun. He listened quietly as Mason made his way through the aisles, pointing out dust on fixtures and muttering about how nobody here has pride anymore. By noon, Mason had made 3 employees redo tasks they'd already finished, reassigned lunch breaks without warning, and dismissed a customer complaint about a mislabeled price tag by saying, if they want perfect, they can shop somewhere else. Zeke had seen enough. He waited until the end of shift meeting when the team gathered near the entrance to hear the usual rundown. Mason stood in front of them, arms crossed, talking like he was addressing a group of students who'd failed a test. "Today was sloppy," he said. "I don't care that we're short. I don't care that it's hot in the back room or that the new guy doesn't know where anything is. If this store doesn't tighten up, I'll start rotating people out. No more warnings." He looked at Zeke when he said it. Zeke stared back, unmoved. After the meeting, when most of the staff had scattered, Zeke followed Mason into the back office. The door was propped open with a plastic bin, papers stacked haphazardly on the desk. Mason sat in the worn swivel chair, typing something on the terminal. "Got a minute?" Zeke asked. "You're the transfer, right, Carter?" "Yeah," Mason leaned back. "Something on your mind? I've worked a lot of stores, seen a lot of managers. You run this place different. That's supposed to mean something. It means I've seen teams fall apart when they're treated like they don't matter." Mason laughed once, short and dry. "Let me guess, you're one of those team culture guys. Think a pizza party fixes morale. I think people do better work when they're respected. And I think people respect leadership when they know who's in charge, not when everything's a group hug." Zeke didn't move. "You've had 3 people quit in 2 weeks. You've got 1 person doing pickups, 1 person running the floor, and no one who'll speak up when something's wrong." Mason narrowed his eyes. "You coming in here trying to lecture me on staffing? I'm telling you what I see. You're here 3 days and you think you know this place." Zeke reached into his back pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. He laid it on the desk, an order confirmation. "Ellie Carter, same cookware set. Same table." Mason glanced at it, then looked up. "What is this?" "I placed that order online, picked it up here, took 30 minutes. 1 item was missing, the other was damaged. No apology, no accountability." Mason stared at him. "You're not just some transfer." Zeke nodded. "I'm Zeke Johnson. I own this company." The silence that followed was immediate and total. Mason's shoulders stiffened, his mouth slightly open. Zeke didn't wait for a reaction. "I came here because I had questions no one could answer. I've been getting reports that didn't match the customer feedback. So I decided to see for myself." Mason stood up slowly. "Look, if something happened that day, I wasn't here. I've been trying to clean this place up. The last manager let things slide. I inherited a mess. You've been here 6 months. That's long enough to make changes that matter. Instead, I've watched you ignore customers, talk down to staff, and create a culture where people are scared to speak." Mason stepped around the desk. "You don't understand what it's like running a store like this. We don't get the best people. We don't get enough hours. I do what I can with what I have. You had someone like Jessa leading, and you demoted her for pushing back on bad policy. You've got Lee covering 3 roles. Kevin's burning out, and the rest of the team is doing the bare minimum because they know they're disposable." Mason's tone shifted. "All right, you've made your point. So what now? You gonna shut us down?" Zeke shook his head. "I'm not here to shut anything down. I'm here to fix it, starting with leadership. You firing me, you're done here, Mason." Mason opened his mouth, but Zeke raised a hand. "You'll get a formal notice from HR, but as of today, don't come back." He turned and walked out of the office. The hallway was quiet. The weight of the moment pressed on his shoulders, but he kept moving. Lee and Jessa were restocking near the customer service desk when he approached. "I need you 2 a minute," he said. They followed him into the break room. Jessa leaned against the counter. Lee crossed her arms. "I need someone to step in as interim manager until we get this place stabilized. Someone who knows the store and the team." Jessa blinked. "You're serious?" "Yes. If you're willing, I want you to take it." "What about Mason?" "He's gone. Effective now." Lee sat down slowly. "What's happening to the store? It's not closing, but it's changing. I've seen enough to know this team deserves better. And I'm going to make sure that happens." Jessa nodded slowly. "If I do this, I want authority to bring back 2 people who quit last week. They were good. They just burned out. Done. And I want approval to split the freight schedule. We're doing too much with too few hands." Zeke reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. "Call HR, tell them what you need. Use my name." Lee looked at him. "You're not like I thought you'd be." "I haven't been like I should have been." "That's going to change." He left them in the break room and stepped out into the store. It was quieter now, the evening lull settling in. Kevin was near the front, adjusting a shelf of boxed fans. He turned as Zeke approached, Mason gone. Yeah, Kevin nodded once. Good. Zeke stood for a moment, taking in the shelves, the lighting, the scuffed floors. The imperfections were still there, but so were the people who kept showing up. He pulled out his phone and opened the company portal. He tapped out a message to the operations team. It was short, direct. We're doing a full audit on every store, starting tomorrow. No more filtered reporting. I want the truth every time. He hit send. Then he walked back to the loading dock and grabbed a box cutter. There was still work to do. Zeke arrived 2 hours before opening the next morning. The store lights were still dim, the parking lot mostly empty except for a delivery truck idling near the loading dock. He parked near the side entrance and let himself in with the spare key Carla from District had overnighted. Inside, the silence felt heavier than usual. He made his way to the back office, now cleared of Mason's clutter. The desktop was clean, the whiteboard wiped clear except for the words Freight Tuesday scribbled in fading marker. He opened the cabinet, pulled out the paper schedule for the week, and laid it across the desk. There were gaps everywhere, shifts with one name on them, others entirely blank. Jessa arrived next, carrying a clipboard and a thermos that looked older than the store. Her hair was pulled back neatly, and she wore the black polo now reserved for supervisors. She gave him a tired but steady nod on her way in. I'll need to rewrite the schedule, she said. 3 people already texted me this morning asking if Mason's really gone. What did you tell them? I said yes, and that I'd call them later. They got to work. Zeke took the freight list and started matching it against the inventory sheets. Jessa began revising the schedule by hand, erasing Mason's notes and rebuilding it based on who she knew would actually show up. By the time the store opened, they had a plan for the next 72 hours. Fewer tasks, more staggered breaks, and a rotating coverage system that allowed at least one person to float between departments during peak hours. At 9, Kevin walked in wearing headphones around his neck and a cautious expression. He looked around, then approached the counter where Zeke was restocking tags. You're really staying on? He asked. For a few more days, he nodded. So, what now? Today we fix what we can. Tomorrow we keep going. Kevin rubbed the back of his neck. I can cover appliances and home goods if needed. Just don't put me on returns. That desk is cursed. Zeke nodded. You've got appliances, and take a breather today when you can. Nothing collapses if a box waits an hour. Kevin half laughed and headed to the back. By mid-morning, the difference was subtle but real. Jessa walked the floor twice, checking in with everyone. Lee, now back on a regular shift, had taken point on the seasonal aisle and taped a handwritten sign above the clearance bin that read, "Ask me what's new." Customers actually did. Zeke stayed out of the way when he could, only stepping in to resolve issues that had no easy fix. Around noon, a woman came in asking about a mismatched chair set she'd bought online. The last manager had told her to call corporate. Do you have the receipt? Zeke asked. She handed it over. He scanned it quickly. We'll swap the one that doesn't match. I'll handle it myself. She blinked. Just like that, he nodded. We owe you better. She stood a moment, unsure, then smiled. Thank you. He found the matching chair in the back, brought it out, helped load it into her trunk, and returned without fanfare. Jessa was waiting by the returns desk. You do that often? She asked. Not enough. She handed him a sticky note. One of the guys who quit last week, Malik, he said he's willing to come back as long as he doesn't report to Mason. Tell him we'd like him back. Let him choose his shift. She raised an eyebrow. You're just giving shifts away now. No. I'm rebuilding trust. That's different. The register light blinked. The woman with the long nails was struggling with a barcode scanner, trying to scan a bulky box of lighting fixtures. Zeke walked over and took the item, turned it slightly, and scanned it from the base. It beeped. She didn't thank him, but she didn't protest either. He stepped back as the customer paid and walked out. The afternoon brought another challenge. A corporate delivery arrived unscheduled, unannounced. 2 pallets of discounted inventory meant for a different location. The driver shrugged when Zeke asked about it. They just told me to drop it here, said you'd figure it out. Zeke signed the form, then wheeled the pallets into the back and called Carla. When she answered, she sounded surprised. I wasn't expecting to hear from you again so soon. We just got 2 pallets that weren't ours. Who's coordinating central distribution? That would be logistics. I can talk to them. Don't. I'll call them myself. He hung up and dialed the number from the invoice. The man who answered sounded half asleep. "This is Zeke Johnson," he said. "I own the company. Why did we receive stock meant for Dayton East?" There was a pause. Then, let me check something. You shipped products without notifying the receiving manager. That's not acceptable. I want a new routing policy by Monday. No more blind drops," the voice stammered. "Yes, sir, I'll get on it." Zeke hung up and returned to the floor. He found Jessa and Lee near housewares, both looking over a display that had partially collapsed under its own weight. "Who designed this layout?" he asked. Lee pointed to an old planogram taped to the shelf. "From last quarter." "No one's updated it." "Then we change it." They spent the next hour rebuilding the section, balancing the heavier items toward the bottom, spacing out the fragile ones, and removing anything that looked like it belonged to another season. By the time they finished, the aisle looked 10 years newer. As they stood back, Jessa glanced sideways at him. "You ever think about what this place could be if we actually had the support?" "I do now," she nodded. "Then don't forget what it looked like before." He didn't plan to. That evening, after the store had closed and the last customer had trickled out, the team gathered near the front. Zeke didn't call it a meeting. He just stood beside the register and waited. One by one, they turned and listened. "I came here expecting to find one broken link," he said. "What I found was a system that stopped listening. That's on me." No one spoke. "You've all been doing the work of 3 people in silence trying to hold this place together. That doesn't go unnoticed anymore." Lee leaned her elbows on the counter, watching him carefully. "I'm not promising miracles. I'm not promising 10 more people tomorrow, but I am promising change, and I'm promising that you'll have a voice in it." Kevin raised a hand slightly. "Can we start by fixing the break room fridge? That thing smells like wet socks." Zeke laughed once. "Done." The mood shifted. Not cheerful but lighter. As they locked up, Jessa handed him a new schedule. It was taped, stapled, and scribbled across the margins, but it was balanced. No one was overloaded. Everyone had at least one day off that week. She looked at him. "You staying through the weekend? I'll be here. After that, I'm visiting the next store," she nodded. "Good, they'll need it." Zeke stepped outside as the last lights shut off behind him. The air was cool and the sky was beginning to fade into dusk. He didn't feel triumphant. He felt tired, grounded. But for the first time in a while, he knew exactly what his company looked like, not in reports, but in real life. He'd seen the worst of it. Now he was ready to build something better, not from a desk, from the floor up.